You know what they say, if you want to go a little distance, go alone. But if you want to go very far, go with a team. And we have a fantastic team right here. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief. It's your perfect day starter on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Jeffrey Ozama. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. And of course, our responsibility is to help you condense all that has been happening in the politics, say, from when we left off yesterday to this morning, and a lot has unfolded. Our job is just to bring it to the fore so you make sense of the situation. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Bukola.
You know, Jeffrey, interesting development in the last 24 hours.
24 hours,
yes.
A lot has happened.
Indeed, Honorable Alex Ekweche has apologized, but indeed the House has referred the matter to its Ethics and Privileges Committee and asked for a report within a week. And that was a pleasant development to see that, of course, the honorable member could apologize before the whole nation. And we hope that Mr. Abu Aseya would accept his apology. But it remains to be seen how the House will decide on this matter, especially for, the future, so that we can prevent a reoccurrence of such a conduct. But also, Jeffrey, it's important to also know, we may win an award for clairvoyance on this set, that the founder and chairman of Dangote Group is saying that, marketers should come buy petrol, that his refinery has the capacity to supply the whole nation, and the NNPCL should allow marketers to buy petrol directly from the refinery. And, just 2 days ago on this set, we were asking why importers still had to import petrol when we have a homegrown refinery. And so it appears as if, the gray areas in the establishment of that refinery and in the relationship between Dangote refinery and the regulators has not quite been ironed out. Hence, we find ourselves at this juncture, because if indeed that product is in the market, of course, there will be a difference in supply. There'll be maybe not quite a remarkable difference in pricing, but of course, in the quality of the product that we still see, we haven't seen that particular product in the market, because when it was presented to the public upon the launch of the refinery about 2 months back, we could see the distinctive nature of that product. It was clear. Jeffrey, right? A departure from what we see in the market, in the last couple of years.
When it comes to this Dangote refinery and NNPCL, I think we've said enough. But this is what I think is going on. I think Dangote is not telling us enough of what is going on from his end, and the NNPCL is not telling us exactly what is going on from their end. Somebody is hiding a certain truth from the public somewhere. I don't know who it is. I don't want to cast aspersion or blame anyone about this at the end of the day. But somebody between Dangote and the NNPCL is not telling us exactly what is playing out. Look, I'm big on the entire many sources of supply as long as they are standard and affordable. So we're talking affordability, accessibility, and availability. All these are necessary for the general public to be able to consume this product. So I don't know who to hold responsible. The NNPCL, they hardly talk. I went to their page and all I'm seeing is eye care outreach or something like that. But Dangote has been speaking, and it also draws, it just makes me remember how the rich will fight for their own cause. Those are the lower ebb of the society should see how the rich can fight when it comes to them. Dangote has been speaking to the media since this refinery more than I've ever seen him talk ever in his life. But that's besides the point. The point is, there may be something that Dangote is not telling us, and there may be also something that the NNPCL is not telling us. Now, the marketers are saying it's quite expensive to lift products. They used to lift it for 7 million per truck or 45 liters. Now it goes for as far as high as 47 to 50 million naira. So they now have to look for a way to combine resources to be able to buy just one truck, and those who are quite buoyant can buy as many as possible. And it's just brings to the fore this issue of the opaqueness, the lack of transparency within the oil and gas sector. We have a homegrown refinery. If you want to import, fine, whatever you want to do, but make the products available. So somebody's not telling us the truth. Why is the NNPCL and any other person who is importing still importing when Dangote is there? okay, we say we want to have as many mix as possible. So what is really going on? Dangote say he has about, is it 500 million liters?
500 million
in
liters.
his tank, ready to be lifted, but nobody is lifting it. He said, of course, Nigeria consumes about 30 to 40 million. He's ready. He can wet the market as much as it wants. So the truth lies within the NNPCL, the marketers, and Dangote himself. So those three guys, or those three entities, if you will, I call them organizations now, need to speak the truth. Somebody is not saying the truth amongst them. And we will find out what the truth really is, because if the product is available, you're not lifting, and pricing issues, something is not happening. And then let's talk about, Bukola talked about this issue of the honorable. I'm happy he did the honorable thing by apologizing to that gentleman. I told you some things he did are not justiciable, but threatening somebody to make them disappear, also assaulting the person multiple times is unacceptable. There's a way as a public official you should conduct yourselves. And in recent times, we've seen public officials conduct themselves dishonorably, including Nyesom Wike, the Minister of the FCT. I saw a video, I don't know what altercation he had with landowners or realtor or whatever, and he didn't conduct himself properly. He literally almost wanted to move like he wanted to slap somebody, say, why are you talking when I'm talking? And all of that. So that is not how to conduct yourself. Whether you're a minister, whether you're a governor, whether you're an honorable member, a senator, you're a public official, there is a way to conduct yourself, and you should not conduct yourself dishonorably. For the records, let's make this clear to public officials. You are the people's employee. Let's say it again. You are the people's employee. From the president down to anybody we pay with public funds. You're not higher than anyone. We just aggregated our commonwealth, and you came and said you can do the job. I was okay. You look like the guy that can do the job or the lady that can do the job. And we gave you the job. And then the elected officials have opportunity to also appoint people that will serve like ministers or governors or commissioners and all of that. So you're not above anybody. You can't threaten anybody. You should conduct yourself with respect and honor so they don't embarrass the entire nation. So from Ikweche to Nyesom Wike, to anybody whose conduct is not, at par with what it should be, I think we should retract and do the right thing.
Rightly said, Jeffrey,
yes.
It's a master-servant relationship. And just before we leave that petrol matter, Jeffrey was saying something very important that, there are questions that need to be answered. Someone is not telling the truth. So if indeed the NMDPR is saying that petrol consumption has dropped from last year from 60 million liters to 40 million liters, if the devil or the devil's printer was in the details in the 4.5 million mistake, Dangote Refinery is saying that he has 500 million liters of petrol in his refinery that is waiting to be lifted, and in fact is incurring cost on the petrol continuously remaining in his refinery. Then the NMDPRA, the NNPCL have questions to answer in that regard. And suffice it to say that we have reached out to the NNPCL many times, but of course they have not honored our invitation. So those questions must be answered. Speaking of what we have today, we're going to be checking on the economy hugely, both at the federal level and especially at the sub-regional level. Speaking of which, the northern governors have kicked against the tax reform bill, particularly frowning upon an item which proposes a derivation formula for the distribution of VAT. So what are the implications of this? We explore this conversation with some very important questions. Is that dispute between the federal government and the states resurfacing on VAT? Of course, we'll weigh in on that conversation today.
Yes, the northern governors are saying there will be short change given the model of distribution of all of that. But hey, beyond that, we will be reviewing the fiscal performance of the states in 2023. And the guys who have been working the numbers will join us right here to tell us whether your state is doing well or your state is not doing well. But this is what we will tell you for a fact. Some states in Nigeria, very few, can survive without federal allocation. A lot of other states will go down and go belly up without federal allocation. We're talking about structures and restructuring and fiscal federalism and all of these things. At the end of the day, it lies on the table of those gentlemen you're seeing there. There are about 36 of them. that will be brought to the fore as to how they've been able to manage the resources of their state, at least for the last 1 year. We'll find out right here on the program. Budget to join us.
And today we touch on the softer side of things as we sit with Nollywood actress Tosin Adeyemi to discuss her journey, the ups and downs as well of the industry. Of course, it's a time you don't want to miss. Join us for this exciting conversation.
So, like Bukola will say, I will not use that word. It's a big one. We're having a conversation. So, from
Jeffrey,
the rejection,
I know you can say it's a bouquet that we have for you, so and you'll still be fine.
It's fine. So, from the rejection by the northern governors as to the VAT distribution formula down to how your state is performing in terms of the last 1 year, 2023, January to December, down to a chat with an Nollywood actress. We will be having a great time together. But hey, the most important part is for you to join us on the program. And you know how to do that. Go to our social media of choice, X, #CTV Morning Brief, and share your thoughts. Guys will be able to crop it out and we'll have that conversation. Amplify your voice so that you also have your say on issues of national interest and national importance. But after this time, Bukola joins. Okay, Bukola brings you the highlights of this.
So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. And so, top on the brief this morning, the screening of 7 ministerial nominees, which was to hold yesterday, is now set to take place today. In a statement released on Tuesday and signed by Special Advisor to the President on Senate Matters, Mr. Bashir Lado, the presidency says the postponement was done to allow all nominees conclude all aspects of documentation and pre-screening exercises. The House refers And the House of Representatives has referred Honorable Alex Ikweche to its Ethics and Privileges Committee for further legislative action. The resolution of the House is sequel to a motion of privilege moved by the House Leader, Professor Julius Ihovere. Honorable Ihovere notified the House that Ikweche was caught in a video on Sunday assaulting a boat driver and threatening to make him disappear without consequences, which has brought the Green Chamber into ridicule by his conduct. The decision of the House is in spite of the public apology issued by the lawmaker. And the Minister of Power, Mr. Adeyemi, has announced that electricity will be restored to about 80% of northern states within the next 3 days. Mr. Adeyemi disclosed this while responding to questions from senators over the power outage affecting the region and the recurring grid collapses across the country. As a temporary solution, Mr. Adeyemi told the committee that power would be supplied through the Ugwaji-Makurdi transmission line, which could cover approximately 80% of affected states in the north. He further explained that efforts are underway to access the damaged grid with the assistance of security agencies, and once fully accessible, the damaged lines will be repaired, allowing for a complete restoration of power to the affected areas.
The bandits are also threatening the contractors that we sent to fix it, which is why we sought help of the NSA and the other security agencies. So, with due respect to the Chief Senator, the northern blackout was not due to technical grid collapse. It was vandalization. And we have explored alternative routes of supplying power, which is the Makurdi-Bauchi route, which was also vandalized anyway, but that one is easier to fix. And we are saying within the next 2 to 3 days, there will be light restored to the north.
The chairman of Dangote Group, Mr. Aliko Dangote, says he believes fuel queues in the country will disappear if the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited and other marketers will stop importing products and buy from his refinery. Speaking after a meeting chaired by President Bola Tinubu with oil industry officials and regulators at the State House, he said his refinery has over 500 million litres in storage ready for distribution.
I have a refinery. I'm not in the business of retail. If I'm in the business of retail, then you hold me responsible. But what I'm saying is that the retailers should please come forward and pick. If they don't come forward and pick, what do you want me to do? There's nothing that I can do. So I am expecting either NNPC or the marketers to stop importing. They should come and collect. We have what they need. And, as they remove, I'll be pumping. I don't know whether you understand what it takes to keep 500 million liters inside our tank. It's costing me money. Every day, if I will be able to collect the naira, I can actually charge somebody 32% in interest. So right now, that's what I'm losing. And you are talking about 500 billion. We don't print money, but the issue is that if they come and collect, then you will not see any queues in the filling stations. We have what it takes for them to come and collect. We are not retailers. We also don't have trucks to send. We have a factory where we can load. If they come and pick, they will go and distribute. And they've been doing that with importation. So if they have been doing that with the importation, if it's true they are doing 55 million, I see no reason why they won't come and collect and distribute.
And now to the states. The Osun State chapter of the All Progressives Congress has announced the immediate suspension of Rauf Aregbesola, a former governor of the state and former minister, pending the outcome of disciplinary proceedings against him. The suspension is sequel to a resolution by the Ilesha East Local Government Executive Committee of the APC, which requested disciplinary action against Aregbesola for alleged anti-party activities. The allegations leveled against Aregbesola include formation of splinter groups and parallel organs within the party, collaborating with opposition parties to unsettle the APC in Osun, and public outbursts against party leaders, including President Bola Tinubu. The committee believes swift action will restore party discipline and deter other members from engaging in such activities. And the National Bureau of Statistics says the 36 states of the Federation, including the Federal Capital Territory, recorded an internally generated revenue of 2.43 trillion naira in 2023. The latest report released by the NBS notes that this IGR figure, which comprises two major categories of revenue, namely taxes and ministries, departments and agencies revenue, is higher by 26.5% to the 1.92 trillion naira recorded in 2022. A breakdown by the Bureau said Lagos, the FCT and Rivers State topped with the highest IGR. And on the other hand, Taraba State generated the least IGR in 2023, followed by Yobe, Kebbi and Gombe states. And the government of Chad is calling on the international community to step up support for counter-terrorism efforts in the Sahel after Boko Haram jihadists killed around 40 Chadian troops in a surprise attack. The jihadist group targeted a military garrison on October the 26th in the Lake Chad region, an area plagued by various armed groups, killing at least 40 Chadian soldiers. Around 20 people were also wounded. That's according to military sources. And France's embassy in Chad, in a Facebook post on Tuesday, reiterated France's support for Chad in the fight against terrorism and offered its condolences to the authorities and the families of the slain troops. And in sports news, the Super Falcons defeated Algeria 4-1 in Tuesday's second leg of their friendly game as Folashade Ijamilusi netted a hat-trick at the Mobolaji Johnson Arena in Lagos. The Edo Queen star opened the scoring just 10 minutes into the game before doubling it in the 18th minute. Aluache Wasila pulled up one back for the Algerians, but Gift Monday restored the scoreline for the Nigerian side just in the 45th minute. And the win came just days after the Super Falcons, largely made up of home-based players, defeated the same team 2-0 to make it 6-1 on aggregate. And that's a big one, compensation for the loss to the USA just days ago. But what are your thoughts to the big stories making headlines this morning, from the apology by the Honorable at the House of Representatives to that revelation by the founder of Dangote Group that he has enough petrol to cater to the supply needs at home and there is no need for importation It's time now to review your thoughts as Jeffrey joins me. Hello, Jeffrey.
Yeah, Bukola. So let's
what do you have for us?
Yeah, straight to business as it is. So we'll start with the Honorable Mascot Kweche, who has apologized for his action, but the House is saying it's not enough. We'll investigate. And the Speaker is saying, look, we'll not just suspend him or take action because the public is crying out. We have our process. And Nigerians are responding to what the Deputy Speaker of the House has said. G. Papa says the House representing Nigerians doesn't want to do what Nigerians want.
Well, it depends on what Nigerians want right now. An apology has been tendered. So what more?
Some persons may want him suspended, others want him recalled. All sorts of expectation from the members. But, you know, they have their processes. Let's see how that pans out. Bukola, you have the next one.
Creed for M Delta says, we Nigerians are constantly disrespected by those that are supposed to represent us. Obviously, they all know how they got there by their structure.
Okay, and this one is coming from Kene Ezike. He said, who said we want him suspended? We want him arrested, jailed, and banned from public office.
Well, we got you.
He's interested. So what we will do is just to wait for what the House will do with the action they say they will take. 1 week, I don't know what they're investigating for a whole week. 3 days should sort this out. Just ask the guy a question. He has apologized. So what happened before you started speaking to the guy rudely and then threatening him? And some people say 2 AK market days would have solved the problem. But you know, government sometimes just
1 week.
I don't know what they're doing for a week. But, you know, we'll let them do their work. And when they do their work and Nigerians are not satisfied, we now go to the street and say, no, we're not satisfied. But
well,
hey,
Jeffrey, you're right.
They have their responsibilities.
Harsh as the requirement or the punitive action the Nigerians deem more fit is important. Deterrence is just as important. So let's see what the House of Representatives is coming up with, since they are asking for 7 AK market days.
So they have their rules. So let's see what their rules will throw at us. Okay, let's talk about this new prices that is emerging. You know, price of petrol is, you know, the naira is depreciating. It's just literally on a free fall, while the oil prices are also falling. So it's affecting how much we buy PMS at petrol stations and filling stations, as we call it right here. And Nigerians are reacting to some of these increases. Femi says, keep increasing the price. Nigerians will not complain about it. They will adjust and buy. Well,
have you seen an adjusted petrol price, Jeffrey?
I haven't seen yet.
I haven't seen any yet.
I haven't seen yet. I'm still seeing 998 as at the last time I drove around a fuel station.
Perhaps the NNPCL stations in Lagos are selling for 998, but if you went further down, you would see that they're selling at 1,025 naira per litre. And the list that other marketers are selling is 1,075 naira. If you go further down, it's 1,200 naira per litre. So how much will Nigerians buy petrol for before December this year? Mr. President, we require answers. Although the president's advisor was saying the other day that the president never accepted the moniker of Minister of Petroleum Resources, that he never made himself Minister of Petroleum Resources.
Well, since we didn't see the names expressly saying Minister of Petroleum Resources, we saw Minister of State. I think who started it? I mean, recent time, former President Muhammadu Buhari. You know, we hear the design was so powerful that all of them are taking caution and all of that. But hey, whatever it is, whether we have 3 ministers or 2, just do your work. That's what Nigerians want. You have the next one. Yes, indeed.
Taiwo is the next user. Or have you taken Femi, Jeffrey?
Yeah, Taiwo is the
next user. And Taiwo says, in as much as there's no more queues and the petrol is readily available, this is called deregulation, which is determined by the market forces, demand and supply. Nigerians should get used to this new era and stop extravagant life. Really? I don't think there's extravagance in the dictionary of Nigerians anymore. Not in the last decade.
Sometimes I smile when people say these things. We need to be sensitive to the pains of Nigerians. So what has been going on with Nigerian leadership and the citizen is like a father and a son. The father making a mess of the resources and always asking the children to adjust.
And the father is not
that's
adjusting.
why words like we've been living fake life is a piss off. We did not say we want to live fake lives. The managers of our resources manage it one way or the other. So blaming children for the poor management of the home resources by the parents, I think is a bit, well, you have your views. It's okay. That's why we allow you to say whatever you want to say. But anyway, let's go to Lungu, who says, since we keep on adjusting to their excess increment, they'll continue taxing us until we all unite against this hardship and their unhealthy policy that's causing harm to Nigerians.
Well, Akiola is the next user, and Akiola says the more the naira depreciates, the higher fuel prices climb. The government needs to empower us to become a productive nation. No miracle or social media outcry will solve this. Only productivity can lead us out of it.
So when I hear the Minister of Finance, while I do say we're seeing this, we're seeing that, it's positive, I just smile. Sometimes I ask myself, are they living in the same world we're living in? Because the reason for deregulation, floating the naira, removing subsidy, in economics, there's a reason for it to attract certain kinds of investment. We're not seeing it. The naira keeps plummeting every other day. The level of productivity, the basic productivity we need, just basic, gets our production level higher to maybe 2.5 million. We haven't been able to achieve it. So what is this? We're seeing the right whatever. I don't know.
Absolutely, Jeffrey. Yesterday
I don't know what
was saying that the naira for crude deal has set the oil industry on course and made it viable for investment, I believe, without quoting him copiously. But that leaves very many more things to be seen. Has he shored up the investment in that sector? Do we have many more partnerships for drilling of oil in the downstream sector? That we're not seeing. We've seen instead companies at home going outside the country to invest in the oil sector in other countries. And what about the deal announced between NNPCL and Chevron? Is it one on paper, or has drilling as a structure actually been put in place to see that drilling of oil has begun, such that the barrel of crude per day production for Nigeria will be shored up within the next 1 month or before the end of the year? Those questions are not being answered. In fact, the other questions that would have expected to be answered following that engagement between Mr. President and oil dealers in the country didn't come through. So there's more, more accountability that is required in the petroleum sector, and we require the Minister of Petroleum Resources to provide all of the answers. We could even talk also about the state of the Port Harcourt refinery. Jeffrey?
Forget Port Harcourt refinery, I can tell you that for free. Forget it. I'm telling you, if we see it come upstream as a refinery that refines crude oil, not a blending plant that blends off-spec bad fuel, I'll be very happy. But as I just lower your expectations. I'm telling you for free.
Okay, Jeffrey, do we have time for the next?
No, we don't have time. So for me, simple. Get this production level higher. Let our crude oil production get higher, and then we can start thinking of diversification, so that naira can be strengthened as much as possible. But hey, we see your thoughts. Maybe Bukola, what we'll do towards the end of the show, we'll try and see how many we can accommodate before we wrap up today's show. But hey, we'll take the very first conversation. It has to do with the northern governors. They are rejecting and protesting against a distribution formula. So what the new bill proposes is simply saying that is how much you bring to the table, that's how much you'll be given. And they're saying, no, you're going to shortchange us. We're going to explain what all of this means with the expert right here on the program. And after that, we'll talk to the guys from Budget as to the performances of states, 36 states, for the last year, 2023. I'll wrap up with that conversation with Nollywood actress. Join us again.
Welcome back to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. And so we start off with the first leg of our conversation, which is that objection by northern governors to the element in the tax reform bill, which is, the derivation formula for the distribution of VAT. Now, the contention over the VAT Act is not new, going, as far back as I can remember, at least 2020, 2021, when former governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, took the FIRS to court, and the contention at that time was who should collect. So it's always been who should collect, but this time around, it's about distribution. So what's inside this tax reform bill, but particularly, let's look at their position by the northern governors to the VAT distribution formula, which is derivation. And joining us to have this conversation this morning, we have Mr. Mahdi Shehu, who is a public affairs analyst, who joins us via Zoom. Good morning and welcome to the program. And we also have Mr. Nick Aguli, an accountant, who joins us from our Abuja studio. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming through at this time.
Good morning and good morning to our viewers.
And so, Mr. Shehu, I'm going to start with you. I'd like you to articulate, first of all, to set the tone for this conversation, what you think about the opposition by northern governors to the derivation formula for the VAT distribution.
Well, thank you. Good morning. I think there are two legs to this issue. The first leg is that the northern governors suddenly woke up from their slumber. I don't know when they started thinking about the North. The North has been decimated. No voice from them. The North is insecure. Inordinate silence from them. The North is pauperized. Inordinate silence from them. The North is bewildered, confused. Everything collapsed. No word from them, except when the issue of redistribution of income just comes in, and now they rediscover their voices. They have now reinvented themselves, rediscovered themselves, and awakened themselves because money is involved. I thought their priority should have been the issue of security, poverty, decay of infrastructures, and building a better northern society. They are fighting and talking now because it's going to affect them directly, because the money being given to the state is at the mercy of all governors. They are the lords of their own states. Nobody speaks strong about them, otherwise he becomes an enemy. That is the one leg of it. The other leg is that in a democracy, there is nothing ideal in a democracy. Why? Because it is an activity dealing with conflict, how it arises, and the way it is resolved. Compromise, the way and manner it is arrived at. Decision-making, how it is taken. Power, how it is acquired and used to the maximum benefit of the people. Where you have a democracy such as that of Nigeria, you don't, out of your own personal thinking, bring in a policy that will further polarize the society. When you are saying, bring to the table, what you bring to the table is what you get. VAT is about consumption. It's a value-added tax at every level. For example, Dangote will pay his VAT in Lagos for virtually everything. But who is consuming Dangote's products? Virtually everybody in the society. So when you say, because Dangote is paying his tax in Lagos, therefore Lagos brought a chunk of tax, therefore Lagos will get much of the tax, I think you are just being simplistic. You are not about practicing democracy. Or you go to Rivers State and say because Shell and other oil producing companies pay their tax import in Rivers, they also, Rivers will get chunk of the tax. I think this is not democracy. This is selfishness, this is greed, and this is not the way to build a society. This is the way to create more enemies, to create more fools, to create more tribalists. You can never build citizens by doing this selective approach of gathering wealth and distributing that wealth.
Let's take it to Mr. Agule. Mr. Agule, you are the accountant, and so you help us explain how it's supposed to be maybe in other climes. So the way it is according to the VAT Act, Section 40, the distribution is that whatever is collected at VAT is, of course, is a consumption tax. So 50% goes to the state and the FCT, 15% goes to the federal government, while 35% goes to the local government. And now, with what we see, in fact, I see it as a situation where we've been spoon-fed by nature's providence. So all of us are just looking for a pool of fund, and this everybody's guilty, whether from the north or the south. So as soon as there's a bit of a movement that affects how monies come to us, we begin to scream. So that's why you see the issues with the south and now with the north. So I want you to help us from a professional point of view. Should consumption tax, how should it work? Because the model looks like, the proposal is that the consumption tax should not be as it is collected from the headquarters, not from where the products are consumed, which is what the North is saying. Look, this model is not going to work because most of the headquarters of these companies, they are not in the North. They're in some other places. So if you begin to do it this way, we'll be shortchanged. Do they have a strong point?
Thank you very much for the question. So to put it in the right perspective or to set the context, you actually stated correctly the distribution as we have it today, which is all of the VAT that is collected, net of the collection commission that is paid to either FIRS or the customs. 15% goes to the federal government, 50% goes to the states and the FCT, and 35% goes to the local government. Now, there's another bit to that. It says 20% of what is shared to the states and local government is based on derivation. Now, in the new bill that is now before the National Assembly, the VAT Amendment Bill of 2024, 5% of the distribution has been taken off the federal government. So the federal government now has 10%, and then the states have 55%, and the local government still maintain 35%. However, in this bill that is before the National Assembly, the derivation, the share of the states and local government, the derivation has been moved from 20% to 60%. And this is what is now causing the issue. Meanwhile, even though the northern governors have taken up on this point, complaining that the 60% derivation is too much, it is not actually a matter for the northern states alone. This is a matter for all states in Nigeria where economic activities are not happening. So I can understand from the framers of this bill what their objective is, that they want to encourage states and local governments to begin to generate economic activities in their jurisdictions so that they can have a bigger share or bigger pie of the VAT collections. However, there are issues, and my co-panelist has already started to take on some of the issues. You know, he's already talked about the production centers in Nigeria. Like Lagos is where you have all the ports, you have most of the ports, you have the factories, the imports are happening and all of that, but the consumption is happening all over the state. So in as much as the Presidential Task Force on Fiscal Reforms have put this bill, I think the devil is in the detail. The detail is that, as the leader of that task force says, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele says, how are they going to ensure that they can determine the points of consumption so that they can allocate the tax? How would they determine that? For instance, I'm in Abuja, I have loaded my phone. You know, the telecoms headquarters is in Lagos, and they are most likely going to file their VAT returns in Lagos. So how would the Presidential Task Force, in terms of this bill, now know that I was in Abuja when I consumed this service, and so my VAT
I'm going to follow up on that a bit later on that clarity. But let me bring it to Mr. Mahdi now. And your candor is well appreciated about northern governors waking up from the slumber. And if you look into the NBS report on IGR performance for states, the states at the bottom of the ladder in performance in that regard is the northern states, Kebbi, Jigawa, to mention but a few. So I want you to chart a course for development for the North now. In your view, what would you propose to be the way forward for Nigeria's North to come out of the challenges of, and that, those were the issues discussed at their recent forum, underdevelopment, poverty, insecurity, out of school children, such that they can now become economically viable and VAT distribution would no longer be an issue?
You see, unfortunately, substantial number, majority of the northern voters are docile. Docile for so many reasons, ignorant for so many reasons, and uninformed. They are politically uninformed. Otherwise, how can you surrender your franchise based on 500 naira? Based on 1,000 naira, based on sentiments, based on naivety? This is the crux of the matter. We don't audit people. We don't do character audit in the North. We don't query people. People of questionable character and questionable circumstances will simply spring up. They come from Abuja, from Lagos, from London, from somewhere. They sent into the arena with money, cleanse the ticket, and desert the society. Secondly, when you have a governor of a state thinking of building an airport in a state with 6 million out-of-school children, in a state where the entire health sector has collapsed, in a state where you have graduate unemployment, in a state with high insecurity, that governor's intention is not in the best interest of society. Or check any northern budget, and there is no exception. Look at the amount of money dedicated for what? For administration in the governor's office, for traveling and transport in the governor's office, and for entertainment. Contrast it. There is a governor with 20 billion naira admin and overhead costs in our budget. Yet in the Ministry for Health, he has only 4 billion naira. In the Ministry for Youth, he has only 500 million naira. In the Ministry of Women Affairs, he has only 750 million naira. If that governor tells that he is interested in youth development, in job creation, in the welfare of the women, he is just deceiving himself, because people are not fools. As long as there is no concrete plan on ground to develop the North, and it is possible because people that presided over the North in the past, that had little money, much, much lower than what we are collecting now, were able to cut a cost, were able to have a focus and a foresight and a plan. But our current crop of northern politicians, most of them, they have no plan. Their plan is only on their own chest, in their own minds, in their own bedrooms, among their own cliques, cattle, and cabal. They don't look at the larger society. What they look is at the myopic, the smaller part of the society that pleases them. The larger society can go to hell as long as they continue with this attitude. For that long, we will be crying foul about VAT. We will be crying foul about location of federal government projects. When they are on their own, they can do a lot. If a pregnant woman dies in a local government village as a result of dilapidated health infrastructure, what has that got to do with the federal government? If a child cannot go to school in a local government, primary school, what has that got to do with the federal government? If the feeder roads are not good, what has that got to do with the federal government? They need to wake up from this slumber, do the right thing, at the right time, at the right moment, before their names are written in the book of infamy.
All right, Mr. Sheol, I will stay with you for a bit because I see your point. So from what the accountant, Mr. Agule, has explained, it looks like the thinking of the framers of the law, the proposal. I know that Mr. Ayodele Taiwo had posted yesterday that they will engage the northern governors so that some of these gray areas will be sorted out. And I hope that we're going to get the outcome of that conversation. But I listened to Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State yesterday on our sister program, and he did mention that, look, what they want is let status quo remain. But it looks like the thinking of the framers of the bill are saying we want ease of accountability and tracking as well as promote subnational enterprise. But is the North also seeing this as some sort of fiscal federalism or restructuring through the back door? Is that a perception?
It's just clearly the point. What we are saying is that there has been this call for restructuring. But for the North now, if I were to speak for the North, I would not speak for restructuring. I would think of giving people what they want. Yoruba nation want Oduduwa Republic. In the name of God, give them Oduduwa Republic. This is 21st century. We have a right to choice. Biafra want Biafra. Give them Biafra. Give every other nationality what they need. Because as far as I know, the relationship is sound. There is geometrical increase in suspicion across all expressions. The trust is not there. Suspicion is not there. And people who want to develop at their own speed. If you want to go at the speed of rocket, please, you should be allowed to go at the speed of rocket. If you want to go at the speed of snail, go at the speed of the snail at your own peril, at the consequences coming to you. But for now, if anybody is thinking that physical federalism is the solution to Nigeria, he is not even understanding the geography, not understanding the history, not understanding the mathematics, not even aware of geometry and the geometrical implication of what they are asking about physical federalism. What we should have is, we should have sub-nations among Nigeria. Let every tribe, let every region get what it wants. Short of this, our children, our grandchildren will abuse us because we are going to leave behind for them a cancerous, that will defy every chemotherapy.
So, Ms. Agule, I'll come to you now for that clarity. And, you know, over the years, states like Lagos have been the epicenter of the collection of VAT. And according to reports, they generate as high as 55%. But what comes to them after distribution is 10%. And for that, they've been advocating for, you know, a form of legislation that will address this seeming injustice in the VAT distribution. So what would you propose to be a correction of this devil in the detail bit, you know, of the distribution for the VAT, such that it would be more even? Would it be restricting the federal government to collecting only import and excise, such that this derivation principle would be more even for states that generate more VAT to get the equivalent of the VAT that they generate?
Thank you very much. And so this was the case that was filed by the Rivers State government, wherein they wanted each state to collect the VAT in their state. And they actually won that case at the Federal High Court, but the appeal court threw it out. I wonder if they are going to the Supreme Court. However, the problem here is that in the current distribution, 20%, which is what is going to the state and local government, is made based on derivation. Ostensibly, the northern governors are happy with that. The problem is that that 20% is now being upgraded to 60%. So perhaps that is where there could be room for negotiations. If it is not 20%, perhaps, which is too low, it should not be 60%, which is perhaps too high. Therefore, where will be the meeting point? But for me, the important thing we should be discussing about in this country is two principles about taxation. Number one, are the rich paying their fair amount of taxes, because taxation has to be that everybody, depending on your income, should be able to pay your tax. And I know that if you go to all of our markets this morning, the market women are being taxed. The people doing Okada business, the ones doing boat and all of that, they are being taxed. But are the rich of Nigeria also paying their taxes? That is question number one. Question number two, what is government doing with these taxes? Because whatever is being generated as taxes needs to reflect in terms of the benefits that citizens are getting. And if citizens see how their taxes are working, they on their own will even be more encouraged to pay taxes. And we're not doing that. And then the other point is that we're taxing a small economy, an economy that is running on 3,000 megawatts of electricity, of which we continue to have grid collapses. As we speak, I don't know if electricity has returned to northern Nigeria yet. We should be looking at going back and building an economy, a big economy, such that when the economy grows, even at the current tax rates, we'll be able to generate a lot more money and fight less on the distribution of this revenue, because everybody will have enough. I mean, as I'm speaking here today in Channel Studios, I should be able to leave these studios and go to around Eagle Square and take a train at the terminal to any of the 36 states in Nigeria. But right now, I can only do that going to Kaduna. Why are we not building rail tracks all over the country so that we can grow the economy, build the economy? Why are we building airports, as my co-panelist said, instead of doing agriculture? If you go elsewhere, every single land that is available is cultivated, you know, either with tree crops or with cash crops. So these are the kind of conversations that we should be having. And the northern governors, just like every other governor in Nigeria, should be thinking about how they can boost the economic activities within their states. And if they do that, there are other taxes like payee. There is no question about who collects payee. Payee is paid to the state government, and they will have enough of those revenues to continue to execute their project.
Mr. Shehu, let me come back to you. It's difficult not to agree with you when you said that because this money thing has touched the governors, they've started reacting. Because you can also bring that to the issue of local government. All of a sudden, state governors now have time to organize local government elections across board. There are states that we didn't have elections for a very long time. But because of the deadline given by the federal government and how it impacts the pockets of the administration of local government, which is a proxy of the governors in most cases, which what we're seeing, all of a sudden they now have time to organize local government elections. So it's difficult not to place this around the issue of fiscal performance, fiscal responsibility, as well as the politics around it as well. So do you see this as having some level of political consequence in the long run as far as this issue of VAT is concerned, if it's not properly sorted? Because we're seeing a lot of anger in certain quarters.
On record, there is no state in Nigeria that conducted a free, fair, and credible local government election. It's just a fraud. They are rushing to do election because it's going to affect the income of the state as far as local government allocation is concerned. They are after the local government fund, not after the credibility of the election that bring in the local government local government executives into office. That's number one. Number two, I think people should understand what is called the incidence and impact of tax. VAT is a tax, and it has an impact and an incidence. The impact is on everybody who consumes, like my brother said, the telephone services, who consumes the fuel, who consumes kerosene, who consumes everything produced. And it means that everybody is a victim of tax, because the incidence may vary in ratio and proportion, but everybody is a victim. If everybody is a victim, there should be a way of ensuring that that victim also enjoys the benefit of him being a victim by consuming a particular product. Therefore, let us look at, can we distribute VAT based on population? The South will cry foul because of the northern population. Can we distribute now VAT based on collection? The North is now crying foul because they don't have any productive activity taking place in the North. So what do we require? We require a middle cost. What do we require? We require to drive wisdom. From where? People like St. Augustine, the author of City of God. City of God is a book written by St. Augustine to tell you how nations are built. By what? By giving and taking, with pity and compassion, with coordination, with synergy and linkages. You don't just wake up in the morning, make a policy that will rather polarize the entire society. Drive wisdom. From what? From the book written by St. Augustine, City of God. Drive another wisdom. This is to the governors and to the ministers, to the senators, to everybody in governance, to Tinubu, to everybody. Go and read the book called Confession, written by the same author, St. Augustine. Confession is about looking inwards, asking yourself honest questions, even if they are rude, and try to answer them. Confess what you have done to humanity. Avoid inflicting injury. Establish a linkage with God. Treat humanity with dignity and respect. Otherwise, you are not a worthy leader.
So, Mr. Anguli, as we reflect on those powerful words from Mr. Magdi, in the same vein, do you foresee that this could be another round of constitutional dispute? Because if the governors are, northern governors are objecting, do you foresee that, look, those who believe that they are the golden goose laying the golden eggs should also protest and get what rightfully belongs to them? So are you projecting another constitutional disputes that will arise from this?
Yes, indeed. There is going to be a constitutional crisis because, like I said, even though the governors, the northern governors, are the ones that are now pushing this narrative, it is affecting all states that are not producing, even if they are in the north or south. Because if you look at states in the south, like probably like Ondo State, the states in southeastern part, in fact, down in the south, you only look at Rivers State and Lagos State as the main states that are getting VAT remittances paid to them for economic activities generated across the nation. So it will not be long before other states will also join in the fight to say that this distribution using 60% derivation is rather too high, too lopsided to the advantage of states where headquarters of companies are operating. Because like in Rivers, that is where most of the oil companies are operating. And then in Lagos is where the head offices of like banks are operating and things like that. And especially now that we have the fintechs and we have technology and all of that. If I do a transfer, as I'm in Abuja here, I do a transfer on my bank app. Who is going to take the tax? It's the bank. Who is going to remit the tax? It is the bank's headquarters in Lagos that will remit the tax. So this is why the Presidential Task Force on Fiscal Reform, we need to come with more details on how such a transaction can be determined. That for me, who is in the FCT, doing a bank transaction, they can actually trace that transaction to the FCT and allocate that tax collected, that VAT to the FCT. These are the kind of details that are going to quell the agitations. But if they don't have this kind of clarity, I don't think we are going to see an end to this soon.
All right. We hope that with this conversation, we've been able to provide a little bit of clarity that will inform the conversations in the coming days. Would like to thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming through. We've been speaking with Mr. Mahdi Shehu, a public affairs analyst who joined us via Zoom, and Mr. Nick Aguli, accountant, who joined us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a nice day.
And from this point, we're still staying with the subnationals. This time, we're looking into their account books to see how they've performed in the last financial year, being January to December 2023. Those who have been looking into those books will be joining us for a breakdown. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the program. And of course, we'll get to the very next leg of our conversation. And this time, we want to look at the performance of subnationals. Every year, budget puts together, they do the maths and calculate the performance of each state in terms of their fiscal performance to see how well they did in terms of increase or decrease in IGR, their dependency on FAC, how much they spent on health, education, and all of those numbers, as well as, you know, per capita for each state. So it's all about looking at the economics or macroeconomics of every state of Nigeria. And I can tell you for free, some are trying, some are not doing well. And that's why they're here to break it down for us. We're being joined in the program from our Abuja studio by the head research and policy advisory at Budget, Mr. Iniobong Hussein. Mr. Hussein, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, good morning, and thanks for having me.
All right, I hope that at some point my producer will get us some of the slides so that we get to see what you'll be talking about. But whilst we're waiting for all of that to come to be presented, maybe give us a highlight of some of the discoveries in terms of numbers that Budget has found for the states for the year 2023. I know you index them according, you grade the states depending on what parameters you're looking at. So walk us through briefly as we begin to dig deep.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Nigerians. So the State of States is Budget's flagship product that is conducted annually. And we do this to sort of ascertain the comparative viability, sustainability of the 36 states. So we try to see how states, given their revenue functions in the Constitution, are able to meet up with their expenditure obligations. And so we have 5 indexes that we use to assess the states. For the first index, we try to see how states theoretically can meet their operating expenses, which is, you know, the salaries, wages, pensions, what you have as personnel cost, overhead cost, and then the interest on loans with what they're able to generate internally. So basically, just to assess the domestic resource mobilization capacity of the states. The second index, you know, looks at how states are, you know, improving efforts towards raising IGR year on year. So how have states fared year on year with regards to IGR growth, whether it's with their tax revenue or non-tax revenue. The third index tries to see how states are looking at all the sources of revenue, whether it's the FAC receipts, the internally generated revenues, or what they get from aids and grants, how states are able to meet their operating expenses and loan repayment obligations with the total revenues that accrue to them within a fiscal year. And then the fourth index is like a composite index, you know, 4 mini indexes that tries to look at the debt sustainability of states. So we look at the foreign debt as a percentage of total debt. We also look at the total debt to total revenue. We look at the debt service to total revenue, and then the personnel cost to total revenue. And the last index, Index D, tries to, you know, see how states are prioritizing capital expenditure to recurrent expenditure to sort of address the infrastructure gaps that exist along the length and breadth of the Federation. So this is a summary of what the methodology looks like.
Okay, so let's begin to look at them maybe closely. I think the one you call, let's say, Index A, where you talked about Index A looks at ability of states to meet their operating expenses, which has to do with recurrent expenditure, with only their internally generated revenue. Because part of the conversation, we want to be able to say, this state is doing well, this other state is not doing well, else it's just going to be speaking to a bubble. So if you use this Index A that has to do with, if they were to fund their operating expenses, which is recurrent expenditure by IGR, which of the state, because that speaks to viability. It speaks to the ability to depend less on FAC. It speaks to the ability to not go belly up in case FAC is not coming. So maybe you walk us through the state and what you found to be the drivers of the performance and what is responsible for the poor performance?
Yeah, so for you to score well on Index A, it's either two things. It's either you are reducing your operating expenses with specific focus on your overheads, or you are significantly increasing your IGR so that it's buoyant enough to cater to your operating expense. So what we've seen, and not just with this year, but over the years, is that for states like Rivers, for states like Lagos, that usually have very significant IGR, they're able to meet up, a large chunk of their operating expenses with what they're able to generate internally. Alternatively, for states like Bayelsa, despite, the huge FAC receipts that accrue to them and the relatively small size of the state in terms of population, they have very large operating expenses. I mean, they have the third highest overhead costs among the 36 states, despite being one of the smallest states. And then they have, one of the lowest IGRs as well, meaning that they would require about 8 times their IGR or more to be able to meet their operating expenses. So for states that intend to score higher on Index A, you either have to, intensely increase your capacity to mobilize revenues internally, or you have to drastically reduce your operating expenses, which is anchored on, the cost of governance and, how you manage your debt with regards to the cost of loans, the utilization of those loans, and what you have to repay when those loans are due.
Mr. Effiong, this breakdown that you have presented is quite telling. Just the 5 indexes, there is no above average performance. All the highest here is 30%. And I want you to speak to debt sustainability because the benchmark explains itself to be that the debt sustainability of the states using 4 major matrices: public debt, foreign debt, debt as a percentage of revenue. So which states do you find to be floundering in this category?
So across board, I would say that if you look at the 3 other indexes, debt to total revenue, debt service to total revenue, and then your personnel cost to total revenue, majority of the states are within the threshold. But when you look at the foreign debt to total debt, that's where there's cause for alarm. So there are 8 states that have their foreign debt that is more than 50% of their total debt. What this means is that these states are highly susceptible to exchange rate volatility. Now, the foreign debt year on year increased by just about 4.1%. But as a result of the devaluation of the naira against the dollar from about 889 naira on December 31st, 2024 to about 1,500 naira to the dollar in June 2024, the debt stock of the states increased by about 2.74 trillion naira. So that tells you that for states that have a large chunk of their debt owed in, in foreign currencies, that state, for every time the naira devalues against the dollar, that state would require more naira to be able to procure dollars to pay back those loans. So those are states that are at risk with regards to meeting their loan repayment obligations. But with regards to the debt service to total revenue ratio, averagely, that's still within threshold. The debt to revenue ratio, with the threshold at 200%, still within appreciable limits. And also the personnel cost to revenue ratio, still within appreciable limits. But we need to sound a note of warning here. What we have not been able to do with the state of states is also to ascertain the quality of expenditure. And this also anchors on the utilization of loans. So whilst states acquire loans to, implement certain projects, it's not clear in their audited financial statements what exactly those loans are used for. There are summary statements on, the utilization of loans, but with specific to projects, it's not clear. And it's important that this is made clear because in this time where there's a fiscal squeeze, where there's a shrinking fiscal space for the states, it behoves on the state government to mobilize revenues, but to spend those revenues efficiently. States will need to rationalize their expenditure. You see the proliferation of, building of airports in some states, international conference centers, when there's very little, activities in that state requiring those centers. You see state governments building state-of-the-art, religious centers, as against investing these loans or these meager revenues that accrue to them in productive sectors of the economy or in viable projects that over the long term would be able to pay back those loans as a result of the economic activities that have emanated from the projects implemented with those loans.
So very quickly, just before Jeffrey comes in, which states have a huge foreign debt burden?
So you have Kaduna State and Edo State leading the pack. With Kaduna State, Kaduna has over 80% of its loans, as dollar-denominated loans. And then you have Edo at I think, a little above 60% of their loans being dollar-denominated. But then you have 8 states that have more than 50% of their loans, as foreign loans.
So, Ms. Tosin, I want to go to the document that you budget has prepared, and let's use a case study. I'm very curious to helping us to break this down. Bayelsa State. When I look at the overall fiscal performance ranking, Bayelsa is at 35 over 36. That's horribly poor, just slightly above Jigawa. And if you go to the state of state in 2022, which is just a year before, Bayelsa State was the highest state, the state with the highest dependency on FAC, over 90%. What exactly do you think they can do differently to better their fortune? Because it looks like it doesn't get better. Look, from the records available to us that budget has done and from other numbers, if all the states in Nigeria as companies and then the FAC allocation doesn't come, Bayelsa will be the first to go down.
So there's a lot that needs to happen across board on revenue mobilization, on expenditure efficiency, and on debt management. If I speak to the revenue mobilization, in quite still a number of states, tax collection can be better. Right? We feel that it should be digitized. There should be very minimal contacts with cash. Because as you know, with every system, cash is usually prone to corrupt practices. When people interface with cash, there's a tendency for them to, for sharp practices to occur. So we think that the process should be automated. I mean, there's a lot of technology. There's the use of USSD that people can pay for rates. Whether it's in the markets, whether it's with the keke riders. So you necessarily do not need boots on the ground to collect these taxes, because what happens is you find a large, chunk of those taxes, levies, and rates going to middlemen, while a small chunk of it, gets into the coffers of the state. So if we find ourselves in a situation where, while citizens are paying a lot at their own level, you see that not a lot is reflected in the accounts of the government. A lot is rather going to middlemen. And when it comes to tax equity as well, we see that the top 1-2% are equally not paying their own fair share of taxes. And this is because the states have not, been able to properly enumerate and drive compliance in that regard. And so we believe that the states, using tax intelligence, would be able to properly identify who the top earners are, what their effective, tax obligations should be, and then find also ways to also drive compliance. And I believe the Taiwo Yedele Committee, is also looking at this in this regard. What we also think needs to happen is the harmonization of taxes. The NGF, has also done some work in this regard, to try to see how states, would harmonize taxes and we get to a single digit. Ditto the Taiwo Oyedele committee. But we need to, expedite the process. Because if you go to some local governments across the country, there are different kinds of levies, rates, fees that business owners, small, artisanal, business owners would have to pay. In one instance, somebody who transported agricultural products from somewhere in the north to Lagos had to pay for 77 different stickers. And this cost is passed further down to the consumer. You wonder why inflation is at that rate. Also, the states need to fully operationalize their treasury single account. You still have some states that have multiple accounts running into hundreds operated by the different MDAs of government. And in a system like that where you have multiple accounts running, for the state, centrally, you're not able to properly monitor what comes in and goes out. States like Kano are trying to, clean up the process, close all of those accounts and ensure that there's one revenue account and one expenditure account, as the case may be. Then if you come to expenditure efficiency as well, a lot of Nigerians would, still believe that, and it's evident that there's a lot that the states still need to do with regards to reducing the cost of governance. So while citizens have been told to tighten their belt to adjust to, the two key policy reforms brought about by the new administration, it doesn't seem like the political class are equally adjusting. It would seem that, it's still business as usual for them. You still see the long motorcades. You still see political office holders trying to run people off the road with their sirens and all of that. And so they have not shown that it's business unusual, as the case may be. They have not shown that the times are hard. You still see state governments prioritizing non-essential expenditures like airports as against improving the quality of healthcare, improving the state of road infrastructure in their states, improving the quality of education at that level, improving access to water, sanitation, and health. If you look at the budget implementation reports of the states, it's also in the State of States report. If you look at the health allocation cumulatively by the 36 states, it was, I think, at about 2.3 trillion. But disbursements to, those activities in that sector was only about 1.3 trillion.
And
so
that's
less than 60%.
Yeah, and that's where I want you to speak to, Mr. Tosin. Your breakdown says that it represents a 58.16% budget performance as against what was deployed to it. And this captures 36 states of the Federation, I believe. I want you to speak to the implications of this. What happens to the remaining 42% of the budget? And how should citizens be asking questions about these sums allocated to their health sectors?
So the excuse often put forward by the state government is that they are not able to meet up with their revenue projections. But we find this false because we've discovered that it's more of a prioritization issue. So in certain states, in the year where they claim they were not able to meet up with their revenue projections, they found 15 billion naira to build an airport, as against funding their primary healthcare development agency with a 4.8 billion naira budget. In the same year where they claim, the revenue projections were not met, that's why the disbursements to the health education sector wasn't optimal. That is the same year that they find funds to send people on pilgrimages abroad. They find funds to build state-of-the-art religious worship centers. They find the funds to build international conference centers. And so for us, we feel is a prioritization issue. And the implications for this, especially at the local level where you have the primary healthcare centers, is that people do not have access to basic healthcare. If you look at certain labor wards in some PHCs across the Federation, a dog would not agree to give birth in those wards. They do not have access to basic materials, whether it's with syringes, whether it's to basic drugs, with regards to the welfare of even some of the health workers at the local government level. In some states, even with the 30,000 naira minimum wage, there are some workers that at that level that collect 25–30% of their salaries monthly. What quality of care do you expect from that type of facility? In those facilities, there's no access to pipe-borne water, there's no access to electricity, and yet the state governments find funds to build airports that probably 98% of the citizens would not be able to use.
All right, Mr. Olsen, I'm happy. Our first set of guests, one of them had mentioned this issue of airport, and now you're on it. I'm sure it's really upsetting Nigerians. We had the FAN MD one day here, and she did mention that out of the 22 or 21 airports in Nigeria, only about 2 or 3, about 3 are viable. The other ones have been subsidized, and governors are still going to build airports. Some have built airports, no kite has even flown through those airports. And the lady said, look, rather than building airports, why don't you boost productive activity that would necessitate airport? It's just, as you said, priority issues. So, but I want to take you beyond the numbers without trying to drag you into politics. From what you see, because we can track where the monies are coming from and how much is coming, whether it's from FAC, IGROA, grants, or AIDS, or whatever it is coming from. Expenditure is always where the detail is very, very sketchy. We can't really get those details because, of course, you know why we can't get those details sometimes. So for you, from what you have seen, will restructuring the country play a better role in terms of helping these states to be able to do better? Or is just going to be just empowering people to be reckless even to a higher level at the end of the day? Because if you can't manage the little one you have, if we now say control your resources, how would they manage it from where you sit?
So from what we've seen across board, there is no evidence that the more that has been available to states have been utilized. I mean, if you compare the states that receive FAC to the states that don't, there is no significant difference in the living standards of the citizens in those 2 states. So with the data available, there is no evidence that just by providing more revenue to the states, that they would be able to judiciously utilize those revenues in improving the quality of lives of the residents of their states. So the argument should go beyond, just getting more, because we've seen that in instances where the states get more, they just become more ambitious with bigger and more expensive elephant projects. And so just making more available to the states is not enough, right, to guarantee the improvement in the quality of lives of citizens of the country. A lot more needs to happen. And there's very little that is said on consequence management. If you look at the state governments, you would find very little effort publicly at this, by the state government in punishing erring officers, public officials that have fleeced the resources of the state. You find very few state governments. I'm struggling to find one instance where you hear a state government prosecuting a public official who has stolen public funds. The efforts, the anti-corruption drive is usually driven by...
for bringing all of this to the fore. And we're going to get the full report eventually to see in detail, because I know this is more like a synopsis of what happened yesterday in terms of the presentation from Budget. We must thank Budget for doing a great work. And maybe we'll try to encourage you guys to go to how they spend this money so we know the ones that are stolen. Maybe we'll have a record to that effect, and the ones that are properly utilized. Mr. Adeyemi Sen, Head Research and Policy Advisory at Budget, joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and have a lovely day.
You too. All right, we'll take a quick break and get away from all the serious talk and bring... Yeah, this is also a serious talk, but lighter in their texture. We're talking about the creative economy. We're going to be joined by an actress right here on the program. Stay with us to find out who.
Welcome back. And so as we get to the softer side of things, of course, we can't do justice to this segment without referring to that epic, yes, House of Ga. Of course, it had been produced prior to this time, about the historical warlord who became very powerful in Yoruba land and became power drunk, even more powerful than the Alaafin. And that has been reproduced. And our guest gets a sort of announcement on the world stage in that thrilling epic. Let's welcome actress Tosin Adeyemi to the Morning Brief. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And so many, of course, remember you from that movie, but of course, there's so many other sides to you. You were an actress on stage before this time.
Well, she's still an actress on stage.
Yes,
I am still
an actress on stage.
Yes.
And in some of your interviews, you refer to having acted for about 10 years. I want us to take us through that journey and particularly speak to whether or not the stage is finding expression through talent on, in the big screens, as it should be finding expression of so many other abundance of talent in the stage.
Okay, hi. So yes, I've been acting for, well, professionally, 11 years. Yes, sort of. And I am still an actress on stage, right? I'm even working on a stage play at the moment for the Lagos International Theatre Festival. So I'd say that there are quite a number of us, who transition from stage, to screen. And I would say that for each of us that go through, that process, it's a different feeling. It's a different feeling because it's a different experience. It's a different market, and I know that so many people, so many theater, practitioners, want to be able to have that opportunity because it's really performing, it's storytelling. So whatever platform you're able to tell your stories, be it TV, be it film, you should just take that literally. And that's how I see it. So I'm glad that I'm able to express on these various platforms.
I know that nothing is easy. Nothing, literally. Even stealing is not easy because you could go to jail or be killed in the process. But I want you to compare between the stage and the screen because I know for stage, there are no second takes. For screen, you could do multiple takes, if you will, and then get correct. They can even fine-tune it in editing and all of that. So for you, which is easier to handle? Because some people say, well, it doesn't make any difference. What is your own story?
Well, I think both of them have their, complexities, yes. But literally everyone will say theater is harder because, like you said, there are no double takes. If you forget your lines on stage, the whole world will know.
Have you forgotten your lines before?
Oh, yes.
What did you do? Maybe tell us as you're explaining. Let us
something else. Said something else.
That did not ruin the production.
Yes, it did not ruin the production. It was the people that were acting that knew that was not what we're supposed to say.
Because I'm wondering, you're supposed to say, let's run down. And you say, come on. And I'm like, that's supposed to be my cue.
Yeah. It's a bad thing to forget your lines. But sometimes it happens, and okay, I'll give you one experience. This was maybe 8 years ago or something, or 7 years ago, and I was performing at the National Theatre, and it was the British anthem that we were singing, and I was leading the song, and I forgot I just remembered, God save our gracious queen. That's all I remembered. Long live our noble queen. And then the remaining, the three other verse or stanza, I just said da 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 da. I didn't remember the lyrics, but I remembered the melody, like the tune.
Yeah.
So I just did the tune. But it was horrific for me, and it happens. You move on and you tell yourself, I will never do that again. It's not happening again. But yeah.
Okay, so let's get into it now.
Okay.
House of Gar. Okay. How much significance does your role, Zainab, in House of Gar hold for you?
A lot, because, well, if we're talking Zainab, representing womanhood, sort of, would have a lot of people that say, yes, oh, I'm glad that she stood her ground at the end, even though, what she did was not good. So I'd say that for so many people, Zainab represents, leaving a sort of abusive relationship. Some people would say Zainab, represents when something isn't working for you anymore. You move on. You walk away. And then it was a situation where she didn't have any control over it. She just decided to make lemonades with the lemons that she was giving, And when the lemonade went sour, she threw it out. So I'd say that there are many lessons, that Zainab's character portrays, or many lessons that Zainab's character, teaches. So, yeah, I guess you just take whatever it is that you can from the
Sometimes
character.
I wonder, I don't think I'll be a good actor. Maybe.
I think you'd be.
So, how did you stay unhappy for that long? Because people take it for granted that you're given an emotional place to stick to, perhaps for the 70-80% of a production.
Yeah.
And it could be a lot.
Yeah.
Walk us through that process, because I can't find too many places where you are really happy. Because it looks like there's a lot on your mind. You're not comfortable, but you have to just go through this mess. So sorry for the production. It's not in life.
I get it. Well, it's not easy to stay in character. That's one. Secondly, our filming process in Nigeria as a whole it's even tougher. If you were maybe in Hollywood, you'd say you have, a place to yourself where you could stay and just be in that. And when you come on set, but here you're doing multiple takes. There is chattering going on here. So it's really not easy. But I'll say that the production house and literally everybody that, were on sets, even your co-actors, everyone, just tried to, make it was a good process filming. So when you're supposed to be you're supposed to be a certain way, you find that you actually can be that. There's not so many distractions and all that. So apart from that, you don't have a choice. It's the work that they called you for, So you have to be in character. Otherwise, it will show. When people watch it, they'll see that. And you can't say, oh, people are making noise. That's why I couldn't be in character. So, yeah.
And that's the point I want to explore. I've seen you in another flick beyond House of Gar, Tokumbo, which you also played another very strong character that went through a myriad of emotions. Talk to us about the mind of the artist, how it travels to produce the kinds of emotions that we see and we almost believe when we're watching from this side of the divide. Yeah, talk to us about that.
I'd say that, well, for me, because I can't speak for other people, but for me, all I do is become that person. So I'm no longer Tosin. I am Lisa. or I am Zainab. And all through the process of filming, I am that character. When I leave set, I become Tosin again. Once I get back on set, once I wear my costumes, or I'm in hair, or I'm in makeup, I am Zainab again. And I've said this before that, for example, whilst filming House of Ga, I had already processed in my mind, how I wanted the character to be, what the character was according to her backstory, according to the script and all that. But when we got on set, something else, made me change my mind and was like, okay, you know what? Instead of this pre-planning and all that, why don't you, because Zainab's story unfolds, as it goes. She comes in new and then she grows. So I said, okay, why don't you be that? So as each scene came, it was a new experience for Zainab. So I was just following that. So there is no one thing that you really can do to help you become the character. You just, I just assume it and I wear the body and that's it.
All right, as we're going to wind down, so what's up for Tosin? What's the future? What are we looking at? How much money are we making? Yeah, production coming on one of the platforms. What exactly is happening?
A couple of things. Right now I'm working on a stage play. I'll always do theater, I'm working on a stage play. I just finished filming something in Ibadan. I don't know if you've heard about Osamede. Osamede is coming out, and I'm a member of cast on Osamede. It's produced by James Omokwe, executive produced by Lillian Olubi. So there are a couple of things coming out in the works already, and you guys should just watch out. Really.
Yeah, I'd like to come and see it wherever it's happening.
Asking about the roles that you played in some of the scenes, the vulnerability, and how much of the Western influence is allowing some of those items that we see in those movies in House of Ga, in others. Yeah.
I don't. Okay, let me say that. If I know what you're referring to, I'll say that I think that's always been a part of us. To be honest, if we're talking about how much vulnerability in terms of our bodies, where it has always been a part of the African culture, So I don't really think it's a Western influence. I think it's always been a part of us, and I think that we should stop shying away from that. We should
totally out of time. It's quite a great conversation.
Yeah, so I want to thank you so much. I have other questions, but
we're totally out of time.
Shouting in my ears to wrap up. But we must thank you so much. We wish you the very best.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to seeing Osamede and so many other things that you'll be into in the near future. Tosin Adeyemi has been our guest on this side of the divide. And this is where we wrap up on the program for today. An exciting conversations on all levels, which is what we promise yet again tomorrow when we bring you another edition. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Jeff Ruzoma. Don't forget, top of the hour is Sunrise Daily. Bye-bye.